So 2 days ago at a mass meeting at the Adelaide Entertainment Centre, 200 AMBOs unanimously moved a motion of no confidence in the SA Ambulance Chief, David Place. He, you will recall, is the man who sent out that ill-advised email a couple of weeks ago hinting archly that anyone who spoke out could be disciplined. He went one further on ABC Radio where he even suggested that ICAC could get involved if people dare tell the truth about what's going on inside the ambulance service. That rather foolish remark earned the ire of the ICAC commissioner herself, who said, "I do the investigating around here, sunshine," or words to that effect. The meeting 2 days ago is hugely important for this state because it's being driven by nothing other than genuine concern about the working conditions that AMBOs have to endure vis-a-vis public safety. This is less about some sort of industrial campaign. It is more about the fact that the state has got a continuing problem with the quality of the service that is being provided to people who are unwell, and they have given the government and the ambulance service 7 days to come back with some guarantees about staffing levels and funding, and if not, they reserve the right to take industrial action, which is actually going to go to things like not charging people for calling an ambulance. Now, we are less interested on our show in dealing with the talking heads. We always want to talk to the human beings who are at the coalface, and that's what we're going to do this morning, starting with Chris, who's a paramedic who has just finished his shift. Chris, good morning, mate. Thank you for joining us. Tell us about your night. What's it like out there at the moment on the roads?
Good morning, David and Will, and good morning to your listeners. Yeah, so the last few nights have been just as interesting as all the other nights. Unpredictable cases, unpredictable patients, and unpredictable breaks and knock-off times. So kind of situation normal for the rest of us.
How big a variance would you have in a knock-off time?
Well, to be honest with you, this week hasn't actually been too bad. I've only had a little bit of overtime across my 4 shifts since Sunday, so that was a pleasant change. We did have some extra resources on over the last 2 nights. I did notice when I was looking at the rostering program, so suspicious that may have contributed to some of that as well.
How are all these things affecting patient care at the moment, Chris?
Probably the biggest thing is the fatigue and the mental fatigue that comes with the constant and prolonged patient care that we're now doing. As anybody gets tired, your ability to react, to think critically, and to process large amounts of information slows down. And obviously, in our line of work, we have to make some very time-critical decisions, and sometimes we have to do that with very limited information. So we're relying on our knowledge base, our experience, and the information we're actually able to gather to make those decisions. And when that process gets slowed down, that can then present as greater risk for our patient.
Hey, Chris, when you're catching up with your friends and they say, hey, Chris, I've been seeing this thing in the paper about the state of things with AMBOs, how bad is it? What's the story you tell them that underscores the challenge you face?
So probably going back even just a week ago, I work in the southern metropolitan area. At one stage last week on the Monday evening, I believe there was only one ambulance from our entire area that wasn't at Flinders Medical Centre, and it was actually out of our catchment. It was at Yankalilla.
That was it for the whole of the southern part of Adelaide?
Yeah, so as far as I'm aware, from Mitcham through to McLaren Vale and Aldinga, there were no available ambulances from the southern region.
That's extraordinary.
Ready to serve the community.
Chris, thank you for that.
Good on you, Chris.
We've got a host of paramedics who want to tell their story. Lynsey's one. Morning, Lynsey.
Good morning.
What have you seen out there?
Well, yeah, a lot. I think that this problem's existed for a number of years, and that what we're seeing now is AMBOs stand up because they're seeing patients be directly affected, and that's crossed the line. That's crossed the line for us, and we're sort of towing that line. Chris spoke very well about the decision making that we have to do. And I know that there's a culture amongst myself and my colleagues of probably fear, I would say. I would describe it as fear, that if I make a mistake in those circumstances where I am extremely fatigued and I'm having to make critical decisions in the 10th hour of my shift without a break, I will be liable for those decisions. I'm fully liable and I won't be supported by my organisation. So there's this added burden and this weight that we carry throughout our shift and then into our days off. If I make a mistake in those situations, I'm not going to be supported. So I think that's a big aspect that's not really spoken of.
Yeah, absolutely, Lynsey. Thank you. Hannah is also on the line. Lynsey mentioned 10-hour shifts without a break. Hannah, how often does that happen?
That's pretty common, unfortunately. I know in the past probably few months I've seen my partner have that more often.
How does it play out for you as the partner of a paramedic, Hannah? I mean, it must take a bit of a toll on your family time.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I've probably noticed it, as I said, more so in the past few months, but it's that sort of mental and emotional exhaustion that kind of carries over after his shift, so into, say, the day shift into the evening. He'll go straight to bed pretty much after getting home from work, and then into his days off as well. It takes him a couple of days to recover and really cuts into his time. Yeah.
Thank you, Hannah. Chrissy, one of your parents is a paramedic. So what do you see?
Oh, good morning. Yeah, so I've actually seen my mum go from driving to get the job that was considered her dream job, and it's actually turned into one of her biggest nightmares. That's not only true for Mum, but also for many of her colleagues as well. So she's actually gotten PTSD. That's through lack of support and resources that many of these other paramedics and family members have talked about. And she's actually off the road right now. So that's quite hard for both her and us as a family.
How long has she been not working because of the PTSD, Chrissy?
Okay, so this sort of happened at the end of last year. She went to a job and had to walk off. So, it's just not a good situation for
that's awful.
Any of the paramedics. And that's come about over the years, I believe, as a direct result of the lack of support and resources, because, they go to all these jobs. They are, seeing trauma over and over again, and then they don't get downtime. They're missing their breaks. They're not getting support from the management. They're not getting welfare checks after jobs. When they don't have time to process the jobs that they see and the things that they see, that adds up, and they get burnt out. They get massive. They
probably feel guilty too, wrongly. They'd think, geez, I wish I could have done more.
Well, and if I had a paramedic that I could pick to come to my place, it'd be the one that says this is their dream job. And if that person isn't supported appropriately, then I suspect no one is. Chrissy, well spoken. Thanks, you.
Chrissy.
Craig's a solo paramedic. So, Craig, you're out there on the road by yourself. What kind of demands are placed on you?
So just to put things into perspective, recently, a few weeks ago, when all the AMBO started, all of us started, kick-started everything about speaking out, I was dispatched to 16 cases over a night shift and travelled over 260 kilometres by myself at night. So just driving lights and sirens to all of these jobs requires a huge level of concentration in itself, and it's hugely fatiguing.
16 jobs, you said, Craig. How long was your shift?
12 hours. So thankfully I finished on time, but I didn't have a break up until about the 10-hour mark. So post all this driving, you've still got to obviously make those decisions that a lot of the guys were talking about earlier. Yeah, using a lot of brain power and bandwidth to actually tend these cases to the best of your ability. I mean, literally you've got people's lives in your hands.
You know, the funny thing about that is you see those signs on country roads when you're driving on a family holiday to Melbourne saying you've got to rest every 2 hours. 2 hours. You did 5 times that in a row, 10 hours. And unlike, the person trying to make it to, Ballarat to take the kids to sovereign hill to pan for gold. You're actually trying to save people's lives. Unbelievable.
I've said it before in the context of this conversation, but I worked in hospitality previously, and it was deemed under the award in that industry that working 6 hours without a break was considered too strenuous. You're pulling beers. These people are turning up at a home after 10 hours of not having a break, trying to revive someone who might have just had a heart attack. Gabriel's a former paramedic. Gabriel, good morning to you.
Hi, mate. How you going? I want to say thank you for letting us tell our story first.
No, not at all.
So my name's Gabriel. I've actually just resigned from SA Ambulance Service. And to echo a number of the people that have already spoken, we all really care about our patients and the community, and we did sign up to go to those more traumatising jobs because that's part of it. What we didn't sign up for was doing that at 6 in the morning when you've been working since 7 p.m. and haven't stopped. And the differences of experience when you're absolutely ground down by the working conditions makes it incredibly difficult. When you talked about dream jobs, being a paramedic has been my dream job. But I had to have the realisation that I can't do 10 years under these working conditions. So unfortunately, I've just recently resigned.
What do you do now, mate?
I'm lucky because I'm young, so I've been able to apply for uni, and I'm actually just started medical school. But to me, that's the easier option than another 10 years with this, basically.
Jeez.
Gabriel, thank you for telling your story.
It said that someone that young would just go, stuff.
We'll just
for a
say,
joke.
yeah, I can do other things.
I'm out of here.
There are other people calling in. We have more paramedics and family members of paramedics who are calling at the moment, wanting to tell their story as well. So if you've heard this bubble along and Breaking It 8 and other places and thought, well, maybe there's just a couple of disaffected ambos, that stands as proof, and this stands as proof that people are still calling with their stories. This is a wider problem. In fact, it sounds as almost it's a universal problem.
And rather than it being treated by the ambulance service and the government as some sort of industrial brawl, this isn't some outrageous pay claim we're talking about here. This is about the quality of the service. So the government needs to rethink the way it is managing this entire debate, because there are even more stories like that, and I think quite clearly, say in passing, that the attempts by the ambulance service boss to shut it down don't appear to be working.
Oh, look, I think it goes a clarion call to everyone out there listening. If you're in a workplace that ever says you're not allowed to talk publicly about something you think is unsafe or unfair, you've always got a place here.
Totally.
We'll talk to you and all your colleagues.
Yep.